Hi again. So, the last chapter went over topics and articles and what you find in research. Now, we're going to get a little bit deeper into your specific topic and how we can get to your problem statement and your purpose statement. So, the research problem is completely based off your topic and population. And your purpose statement comes from the problem and lets us know what the goal is going to be for your lit review. So, young children who are hospitalized, preschool age childcare options, preschool children with autism, and strategies to use in the classroom. These are the starting points, right? What is the topic and what is the population that you're interested in studying? Then we get to the research problem. Again, we typically start with a topic that you would like to address, investigate, that you're familiar with, or interested in, and it'll be the focus of your research. So the first one is crossed out here that students can't read because that research problem is not clear and there's many factors that need to be considered. They can't read. It's just not very clear, it's very broad. Whereas the second example, students cannot find the main ideas in reading passages, is easier to measure. Main idea can be defined in the research. We can provide a citation. And then we could actually do a study where we gather data and determine whether students can or cannot find the main idea, maybe based off a certain intervention. So problem statements involve the who, the what, and the how. I'm not as much interested in the how because I know you're getting it from research. What I'm interested is the who and the what. Who is involved in the problem and what is wrong? So this example looks at fourth grade students who have learning disabilities. And what they found was that they lacked the strategies for acquiring multiplication facts. They were only getting about 5 out of the 13 options. And again, the how was through direct observation. So when we put the research problem together, we find that those learning disabled fourth grade students lack strategies for acquiring multiplication facts. And again, you can kind of just end there. It's not necessary for you to say as identified through direct observation or identified through an empirical article, right? Because I know that's where you're getting your information from. Here's a second example of selective mutism, which you'll find I use that example a lot. And again, if I focus on the who and the what, the research problem then is teachers and parents of preschool age children with selective mutism lack the understanding of what selective mutism is, why it occurs, and what treatments are available. Again, I would stop there because the rest tells us where that came from. Okay, so again, your primary focus is deciding on a topic. And by thinking about the research problem, it gets you a little bit deeper into your topic. Again, what is the issue? What is the area that you'd like to address? And this week we have a discussion board where you'll be given a sample problem and then try to come up with a problem yourself. So from the research problem, we are um, it takes us into how to develop the purpose. So, what is the purpose of a lit review? It's the primary intent. It's the goal. It's the direction of what's going to happen in this paper. So if I have a research problem that there's been an increase in violence in high schools due to students possessing weapons, then maybe my purpose would be to identify the factors that influence those high school students' desire to possess those weapons. What about those learning disabled fourth grade students? Well, this paper will identify strategies that may improve the acquisition of multiplication facts for learning disabled fourth grade students, right? That's the problem. And I'm going to hopefully try to solve that problem in my purpose. Here's selective mutism again, and parents don't understand, they have a lack of understanding. So the purpose of this lit review is to identify those characteristics and examine effective behavioral and medical treatment options. So your research problem and purpose statement come very early on in the writing of your paper. Many times it's in the very first paragraph of your introduction, but it does need to be somewhere in your one-page introduction. So let's look at a sample. And again, thinking of selective mutism. So the first sentence is just kind of a grabber, right? It's an attention getter so that we can get people tied into our paper. The second statement in pink or red here is the problem, right? Young children are suffering, parents aren't aware, professionals are looking for treatment, and so I provided where I got that information from. The last statement then is the purpose of the paper. So since we know that there's this problem, the purpose of this paper is to further identify those characteristics and examine the effectiveness of the treatment option. Okay, so narrowing your focus, we kind of think of it like a upside down triangle where it's like a funnel, and I'll show you that picture here in just a minute. But you start by picking your topic, then think about, again, like with autism, for example, there's so many different routes you can go. So think about what you want to include and what you want to exclude, and then start to think of that in key terms. So vague topics are things like children's challenging behaviors. Well, there's so many. And can you really get into detail in this type of paper? Well, instead, you could go into the causes of biting in 2-year-olds. That's very specific. Treatments for autism. There's so many. Well, maybe you'll focus on speech therapy for preschool age children with autism. Importance of reading practice is very broad. But if I narrow it down and really look at the effective of reading practice with fifth graders and their first grade buddies, that is more narrowed and can get me more interesting information. So here is that upside down funnel. And the hospitalized children example is also something I'll use throughout the semester. But basically, this student started with, all I know is I want to look into children who are hospitalized. Once they started researching, they found a lot of articles were coming up about stress. Children who are hospitalized deal with stress. So that became the student's topic. Well, what's the problem then? The problem is that we want to reduce that stress for those hospitalized children. And that turned into the purpose statement of identifying types of therapy, and more specifically, play therapy and music therapy, and looking at which one is more beneficial in reducing stress. And here it is, kind of in a more funnel format. So starting with hospitalization, then stress, then how to reduce stress, then the type of therapies to reduce stress, and specifically play therapy and music therapy. So now we see those areas from earlier kind of put together in more detail. Okay, so here I provided an additional area beyond the purpose to kind of show you where their research sections or the sections of their paper would go into. So the student looking at hospitalized young children decided to examine the effectiveness of therapy options and focusing on music and play therapy. The student looking at preschool childcare options wanted to, I'm sorry, that shouldn't say that, that should say selective mutism. And they want to identify the characteristics. What is it? What's the medical treatment? And what's the behavioral treatment? Preschool strategies, they're going to look at music therapy, massage therapy, and PECS. Treatment therapies for children with autism, looking at behavioral versus medical therapy. And what about incarceration? Looking at the developmental outcomes. Okay. Now, again, as you start to narrow down your topic, and your research problem and your purpose statement, start to think about what sections may be covered in your lit review. And again, that's what's going to become easier as you get more and more research, more and more articles, and get deeper into the topic and see what you really want to cover. Again, with your librarian appointment, your goal is to finalize your topic. You go in there with a broad topic, that's fine, but the goal is to find specific articles related to the narrowing of your topic. All right, thank you guys, and email me with any questions.